Such is a faithful description of this august and venerable relic, and I question whether the learned Scribularius contemplated his Roman shield or the Knights of the Round Table, the long-sought Sangreal, with more exultation. While I was meditating on it with enraptured gaze, Dame Honeyball, who was highly gratified by the interest it excited, put in my hands a drinking cup or goblet which also belonged to the vestry, and was descended from the old boar's head. It bore the inscription of having been the gift of Francis Withers, knight, and was held, she told me, in exceeding great value, being considered very antique. This last opinion was strengthened by the shabby gentleman with the red nose and oilcloth hat, and whom I strongly suspected of being a lineal descendant of the variant Baldorf. He suddenly aroused from his meditation on the pot of porter, and casting a knowing look at the goblet, exclaimed, "Aye, the head don't ache now what made that there article." The great importance attached to this memento of ancient revelry by modern churchwardens at first puzzled me, but there is nothing sharpens the apprehension so much as an antiquarian research. For I immediately perceived that this could be no other than the identical parcel-gilt goblet on which Falstaff made his loving but faithless vow to Dame Quickly, and which, of course, would be treasured up with care among the regalia of her domains as a testimony of that solemn contract. "Thou didst swear to me upon a parcel-gilt goblet, sitting in my dolphin chamber at the round table by a sea-coal fire on Wednesday in Whitsun week, when the prince broke thy head for likening his father to a singing man in Windsor. Thou didst swear to me then, as I was washing thy wound, to marry me, and make me my lady, thy wife. Canst thou deny it?" Henry IV, Part 2. Mine hostess indeed gave me a long history how the goblet had been handed down from generation to generation. She also entertained me with many particulars concerning the worthy vestrymen who have seated themselves thus quietly on the stools of the ancient roisterers of East Cheap, and, like so many commentators, utter clouds of smoke in honor of Shakespeare. These I forbear to relate, lest my readers should not be as curious in these matters as myself. Suffice it to say, the neighbors, one and all, about East Cheap, believed that Falstaff and his merry crew actually lived and revelled there. Nay, there are several legendary anecdotes concerning him still extant among the oldest frequenters of the Mason Arms, which they give as transmitted down from their forefathers. And Mr. Mkesh, an Irish hairdresser whose shop stands on the site of the old Boar's Head, has several dry jokes of fat jacks not laid down in books, with which he makes his customers ready to die of laughter. I now turned to my friend the sexton to make some further inquiries, and I found him sunk in pensive meditation. His head had declined a little on one side, a deep sigh heaved from the very bottom of his stomach, and though I could not see a tear trembling in his eye, yet a moisture was evidently stealing from the corner of his mouth. I followed the direction of his eye through the door, which stood open, and found it fixed wistfully on the savory breast of lamb, roasting in dripping richness before the fire. I now recall to mind that in the eagerness of my recondite investigation I was keeping the poor man from his dinner. My bowels yearned with sympathy, and putting in his hand a small token of my gratitude and goodness, I departed with a hearty benediction on him, Dame Honeyball, and the parish club of Crooked Lane, not forgetting my shabby but sententious friend in the oilcloth hat and copper nose. Thus have I given a tedious brief account of this interesting research, for which, if it proves too short and unsatisfactory, I can only plead my inexperience in this branch of literature, so deservedly popular at the present day. I am aware that a more skilful illustrator of the immortal bard would have swelled the materials I've touched upon to a good mercantile bulk, comprising the biographies of William Walworth, Jack Straw, and Robert Preston, some notice of the eminent fishmongers of St. Michael's, the history of East Cheap, great and little, private anecdotes of Dame Honeyball and her pretty daughter, whom I have not even mentioned, to say nothing of a damsel tending the breast of lamb, and whom, by the way, I remarked to be a comely lass with a neat foot and ankle, the whole enlivened by the riots of Wat Taylor and illuminated by the great fire of London. All this I leave as a rich mine to be worked by future commentators, nor do I despair of seeing the tobacco box and the parcel-gilt goblet which I have thus brought to light the subject of future engravings, and almost as fruitful of voluminous dissertations and disputes as the shield of Achilles or the far-famed Portland vase. And that's Story Spieler for this week. I'm your narrator, Roy Trumbull. Join us next week at the same time.